to the May 4th regular meeting of the Novi Board of Education at the Educational Services Building. We do have a couple of board members that weren't able to be here tonight, so you'll notice that we're a little short in numbers. There's a Village Oaks performance tonight, actually, and one of our board members had a death, a funeral to go to out of town. So if you would all join me in the Pledge of Allegiance as we rise.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Our first item on our agenda is awards, recognitions, and presentations. And this week, in case people didn't know about it, we had Staff Appreciation Week. I know that some of us went out into the buildings and had the opportunity to thank our staff in person. And I heard that our PTOs did a fabulous job. They rocked it, according to the middle school at least, in terms of really making the teachers and the staff there feel important and special. I am going to read a formal proclamation on behalf of the board for Staff Appreciation Week. Whereas Americans' greatest strength has always been an educated citizenry, and whereas the educated citizenry is directly attributable to our system of free and universal public education that provides an educational opportunity for all students, and whereas the foundation upon which that system of public school rests is, most often, the principal and teacher, and whereas the educational support staff provides the assistance necessary to encourage a positive school environment, climate, and environment for learning, and whereas the entire staff is challenged daily to reach out to every student regardless of ability, interest in learning, social or economic background, physical, mental, or emotional handicap, race, religion, creed, or ethnic origin, to provide the assistance and guidance necessary for full intellectual development, and whereas the work of the instructional staff and the educational support staff affects the future lives of all students, and whereas the total staff of the Novi Community School District deserves the deepest respect and admiration of the citizens of this community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Novi Board of Education hereby proclaims the first week of May 2017, Monday, May 1st through Friday, May 5th, as Staff Appreciation Week for the purpose of providing public recognition and appreciation for the dedication and contributions of school personnel, not only to this community as a whole, but to each of us as individual citizens. So on behalf of the board, we really do thank our staff. They do a fabulous job every day, facing tremendous challenges, and also, I think, seeing some glimmers of what our future will be like with some of our students. So,
here.
Thank you. Next, we have an introduction. Dr. Matthews, I turn to you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Tonight we're pleased to be able to introduce our new Village Oaks Elementary School principal, and I will turn to Ms. Diglio to make the formal introduction.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. It is my pleasure this evening to welcome Dr. Alex O'Feely and his family to the Novi Community School District. Dr. O'Feely will serve as the fourth principal at Village Oaks in the history of Village Oaks, succeeding Dave Brown from 1971 to 2002, Mary Goddard from 2002 2005, and Ms. Burnham, who's been an outstanding principal at Village Oaks for the last 12 years. Dr. O'Feely has earned a bachelor's in education from the University of Michigan, where he also played collegiate football for the Wolverines from 2001 to 2004. He has also earned a master's in K-12 administration, a specialist in arts in K-12 administration, and a doctorate in philosophy and educational leadership from Eastern Michigan University. He holds a professional elementary certification and a language arts endorsement, an administrator certification in K-12, an administrator certification in central office, and superintendent endorsement. I'd like to congratulate Dr. O'Feely, who recently participated in graduation at EMU, and I believe it was on April 22nd. He walked to earn his doctorate, and I wanted to extend that congratulations to him and his family. Dr. O'Feely began his educational career as a first grade teacher in Bingham Farms Elementary in Birmingham, Michigan in 2006. He's been an administrator since 2009, spending time in Birmingham and Ypsilanti, from the middle school to the high school, and he also did a dual role of an assistant principal and athletic director. He's been at Birmingham Derby Middle School as an assistant principal since 2011, and at Derby he has led and held a number of committees and led a number of teams to help elevate student achievement and the overall school experience for kids. Dr. O'Feely embraces leadership. He celebrates diversity. He understands the importance of good character, believes in building strong relationships with students, parents, and staff, and is committed to fostering a collaborative work environment for the Village Oaks learning community and to meet all the individual needs of students. His commitment and service extends way beyond the classroom, as he has served as the Vice President of the Detroit Literacy Coalition, where he helped adult men in a self-help addiction rehabilitation facility learn to read, write, and learn basic skills for success. He has taught parents positive teaching strategies to use with their children and have helped them to develop effective tools for raising children as the Circle of Parent lead facilitator for the New Hope Baptist Church. And an interesting fact about Dr. O'Feely, he discovered his calling for education while serving as the lead facilitator for the Prison Creative Arts Project at the Maxie Boys Training School. This is where he learned that when you're able to develop a caring relationship, learning can and will take place. He worked with a group of incarcerated young men to build portfolios that demonstrated their creative work and how to use them for employment or admission to college. And he also prepared young men for their GED test while incarcerated. Dr. O'Feely is married. His wife Stephanie and 2 young boys are here this evening. He resides in Northville and is thinking about his sons being future Wildcats, so we're happy to hear that. He's scheduled to participate in the hiring process for Village Oaks on May 10th. So a lot of the administrators have been screening candidates and getting them ready for hire, and Dr. O'Feely has agreed to sit on the hiring team for the new teachers in Village Oaks. And he's also going to come in on May 15th, where he's going to meet every teacher, every student, and he's also going to meet the boys group, which is the PTO parents, on that date as well. A few fun facts. He comes from a very, very athletic family. His father, Felix, ran track and played soccer at the University of Nigeria. His brother, Frank, played college football at the University of Toledo. And his 2 sisters, Cindy O'Feely and Tiffany Porter, ran track for the Wolverines, and they were Olympic qualifiers for Great Britain. So really some fun facts there as well. It is my honor, and I'm proud to introduce Dr. O'Feely to the Board of Education and to the Novi Community School District.
Thank you.
Carol, thank you for that introduction, and I have to tell you I'm honored and privileged to be standing in front of you guys today. I thank the Board of Education for supporting the recommendation of Dr. Matthews. I thank the executive team and Dr. Matthews for putting me through the process, the interview process. It was extensive, but I learned a lot about myself as a leader, and I was able to clarify my leadership vision during that process. I thank Sue, the outgoing principal, for creating inclusive culture and a culture of collaboration. And over the time since I've been recommended for this position, I've had an outpouring of, I apologize, my son said.
Don't apologize. We've all had kids, trust me. You're okay.
I've had so many people from the Novi community reaching out to me and just telling me about all the great things that I have in store as a principal at Village Oaks. So if that's any indication of the people in Novi, I'm in for a treat. And I do want to thank my wife and my little boys for being here today. As you can see, I have 2 very active little boys. And my wife did a great job. She's been my rock throughout the process. As I was gearing up for the interviews, I was bouncing things off of her head, and she took everything off of my plate as far as the parenting. And Stephanie, I thank you for that. So again, thank you very much, and I'm very excited about being the next Village Oaks principal.
Wonderful. Mr. O'Connor.
I'm assuming they're going to end up offensive guards for the maize and blues, so
Future Wolverines.
Totally acceptable. Welcome aboard. I did quite a bit of extensive research during this process. I talked with Jerry Rentschler, who's one of the former board members in Birmingham, and she had glowing recommendations. In fact, she was sad to think that that you would be leaving the Birmingham School District. So, welcome aboard. Having said that, you do have very big shoes to fill. Sue Burnham has been a keeper. She's been one of our stars over the years, and she has created. You talked about the culture. She's really created a culture of connecting with the parents. You'll see in Village Oaks the amount of parent involvement is just unbelievable. And she's been able to, break those bridges down and really get the parents involved, and it'll be, that'll be a good legacy for you to continue at Village Hope. So welcome aboard.
Thank you very much.
Any other board members have questions or comments? Mr. Amena?
No, I just wanted to also take this opportunity to welcome you aboard, and being a big football fan myself, I hope that we'll be able to see you on Friday nights at the high school at some of our home games as well. So.
Looking forward to it.
I would say, Dr. Feely, hi. My boys were at Village Oaks, so I have a warm spot in my heart for Sue Burnham, but Dennis said big shoes. I was thinking little tiny shoes, but figuratively very big shoes. So welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
We are very thrilled to have you. I am a Wolverine myself, and actually worked with a similar position when I was at U of M with incarcerated youth. So it's interesting to hear of that connection, and that you've done some really great things across the board with some very challenging situations. So hopefully we won't have too many of those challenging situations here, but we are thrilled to have you, and we hope the transition is very smooth, and excited to have you on the team that you're able to do that, to help hire the teachers that are coming in next year. That'll be a very valuable thing to do. So thank you so much, and thanks for being here, all of you.
Yes.
Thanks for being here. It's great to meet you all.
Well, I promised Dr. O'Feely that he could leave after the introduction. So thank you so much for being here, and we look forward to work.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Next is our student board member report. Dr. Matthews.
And we will turn it over to our student board member and ask you to make an introduction of yourself and then to give us your report.
My name is Benjamin Doty. I am the treasurer for the senior class at Novi High School. So starting off for academics, local scholarship night for the class of 2017 will be held on Monday, May 8th in the auditorium. The doors open at 5:15 p.m. and the event begins promptly at 6 p.m. Students were notified if they are a recipient of an award the week of March 27th, and invitations were mailed home the week of April 17th. AP IB exams started on Monday, May 1st, and will run through Friday, May 19th. Congratulations are in order for the 38 Novi DECA members that competed at the International Career Development Conference in Anaheim. Congratulations to the following two teams placing first in the nation. Novi DECA first, Aditya Chitta and Vivek Chinnamility, as well as Aditya Ravi and Nikhil Yadati. Congratulations to Robert Ju for placing third in the nation. Congratulations to Megan Ademi and Jagjit Wani for placing in the top 10 in the nation. Also, congratulations to Avi Samantapudi for representing Novi DECA with outstanding leadership skills, brilliance, enthusiasm, and grace as the Michigan DECA president for 2 years. A Michigan DECA first. Moving on to HOSA. Novi HOSA team also competed and was once again incredibly successful at their state competition. Out of 221 competitors, 112 placed in the top 10 for their event. Additionally, 47 competitors placed in the top 3, qualifying for the International Leadership Conference in Orlando, Florida. Their success is a credit to the work you do every day and to help our students become better writers, scientists, mathematicians, artists, performers, and public speakers. Band. Last night, Michigan School Band and Orchestra, MSBOA, District 4 meeting, Mark Horrigan was named MSBOA District 4 Band Teacher of the Year. This is a well-deserved honor and one that is long overdue. Mark is one of the best band teachers in the state, and that shows every day in his classroom and in the quality of the band program here at NHS. Michigan Youth Arts Festival. The Michigan Youth Arts Festival will be held from May 18th to the 20th at Western Michigan University. Students must qualify in their discipline in order to attend this festival. Congratulations and good luck to all the students who have qualified. First Robotics Team 503 Frog Force. Frog Force competed in the subdivision playoffs championships in St. Louis this past weekend. Unfortunately, they lost in the quarterfinals. It was a great honor for them to compete at the world level. Junior Senior Prom. The Junior Senior Prom will take place on Saturday, May 6th from 7 to 11 p.m. at Suburban Collection Showplace. This year's theme is One Enchanted Evening, or Enchanted Forest. The a cappella concert will take place on Tuesday, May 9th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. Dance and choreography concert will take place on Wednesday, May 11th at 7:30 p.m. in the auditorium. Novi SAD, or Students Against Destructive Decisions. They're proud to announce that the annual senior staff softball game for charity will be continuing this year. This game will take place on Friday, May 12th at 5 p.m. on the softball field at Novi High School. The Select Art Show. The annual Select Art Show will start on Friday, May 5th with an opening reception from 6 to 7 p.m. at Novi City Hall. A variety of approximately 75 pieces of art will be showcased, ranging from ceramics, jewelry, digital art, drawing, painting, and graphic design. The Select Art Show features teachers' selected work from our talented students. The Choir Concert. The choir concert will take place on Thursday, May 18th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. The orchestra concert will take place on Monday, May 22nd at 6:30 p.m. in the auditorium. This week was Teacher Appreciation Week, and so we'd like to wish all the fantastic teachers in the Novi Community School District a very happy Appreciation Week. For athletics, the Breast Cancer Awareness Baseball Game. Novi High School is proud to announce that we will be hosting the Breast Cancer Awareness Game at Novi's Baseball Stadium on Saturday, May 6th. The game ball will be a diamond pink ribbon baseball. It is a donation-based entry, and all proceeds will benefit the National Breast Cancer Foundation. Game schedule is as follows. Grosse Pointe North versus Novi High School at 10 a.m., Grosse Pointe North versus Catholic Central at 12:30 p.m., and Catholic Central versus Novi High School at 3 p.m. That concludes all the notes from Novi High School. Thank you.
Any questions, comments? Concerns about how busy our high school is?
Yeah, it's quite a packed month.
It is, really, and with graduation and everything coming up.
Yeah,
I'm
comes
sure
up so
that,
fast.
I hope the stress level is manageable. It looked really good today. I was over at the breakfast, no, that was yesterday. The breakfast, and the kids seemed very relaxed. They were participating in it, so that was a nice touch that was different this year, that you had all the student council actually making the breakfast for the staff and clapping them into the atrium.
Yeah, I enjoyed that.
Yeah, it was neat, and it was a nice, like, little breather, I think, for all those busy students. So thank you for being here and sharing that with us, Mr. Doughton.
Thank you.
All right, we will move on. This is our first opportunity for comments from the audience related to agenda items. We would ask that any persons that would wish to address the board would fill out a green card. If they would make sure that Sheila gets it before the end of the meeting, and your comments will be limited to 5 minutes, and Mr. Mena will warn you when there's 30 seconds left. Thank you.
I'm Daniel Dubay. I have comments and questions about the agenda, policy updates, and the recent warning that the board gave to Dr. Matthews. I understand, as read by Board President Bobby Murphy at last month's meeting, quote, the board met with Dr. Matthews on December 22nd of 2016 and warned him that he needs to be prompt and forthright with all material facts important to the district issues or hiring practices in the future. He is also not to recommend immediate family members or individuals based purely on a personal relationship in the future without receiving the board's permission first. My first concern is that there has been no vote by the board to show consensus on these statements and actions. In the interest of openness, I request that you, Board President Murphy, reveal who wrote these statements that you read at last month's meeting. I would also like to raise concerns about the use of the Troon Law Firm to investigate this issue. The statement that Board President Murphy read last month also said the board's objective was to, quote, conduct an independent investigation and ensure objectivity. However, Troon Law knows that Dr. Matthews sends tens of thousands of dollars of legal counsel business to them every year, and this amount has approximately doubled in recent years. Additionally, Dr. Matthews has recently recommended a motion to you, the board, that Troon Law be used as the sole counsel to the NCSD. For these reasons, I don't believe it is reasonable to assume that their investigation was independent or objective. Proof of their expected bias for Dr. Matthews is present in their findings. Dr. Matthews, the person of highest administrative authority in the NCSD, sent several communications to subordinate employees involved in the hiring of an individual he had a personal relationship with and who shortly thereafter became his daughter-in-law. With these facts alone, it is impossible to conclude, as Troon Law did, that, quote, his recommendation did not improperly influence the district's decision to hire that individual. Additionally, Troon Law fails to mention the elephant in the room, the fact that although Dr. Matthews did not violate Board Policy Number 3120 in recommending his future and daughter-in-law for hire, Dr. Matthews has been in violation of that same policy, 3120, since October of 2016. Policy 3120 states very clearly that, quote, the employment other than casual employment of members of the immediate family of board members and administrators shall be prohibited. Daughters-in-law are specifically included. The only exception is for short duration in an emergency. No emergency is present, and Dr. Matthews has known about this issue since at least December of 2015. Why does it again appear that our superintendent both lacks knowledge of board policy and doesn't enforce your policies? Board President Murphy, it appears very deceptive of you to state last month that there was no violation of policy number 3120 without mentioning that at the same time you have been allowing Dr. Matthews to violate that very same policy from October of 2016 to the present. I request that you publicly explain your actions. It is very clear by your board policy 3120 that Novi taxpayers should not be paying the salary of both Dr. Matthews and his daughter-in-law as their concurrent employment is, quote, prohibited. I am very concerned that this violation has not already been publicly addressed and resolved because of rumors, apparently true rumors, of an ongoing closed-door deal to allow cronyism and nepotism in our district by changing policy number 3120 instead of enforcing it in the near future. Consider this an official complaint about the ongoing violation of 3120 by Dr. Matthews and a request that you address this policy violation publicly and promptly at the next board meeting. In the recent past, we have witnessed Dr. Matthews and Assistant Superintendent Carol Diglio indignantly deny practicing cronyism and nepotism, but we all know that actions speak louder than words. So what are their actions? In the December of 2016 warning of Dr. Matthews, you required the disclosure of, quote, personal relationships. I previously requested that Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Diglio disclose their personal relationships with other district employees. In an email that I still have, they refused my FOIA request, stating that the word, quote, personal is vague, the same word you used to warn him. In the interest of adherence to your warning, openness, and taking action to prevent cronyism and nepotism, I request that Dr. Matthews and Mrs. Diglio disclose their personal relationships with anyone whose salary I am helping to pay at the next board meeting. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Jack Hilger. I'm here today to speak on the policy regarding a revision that you intend to change the current policy of 3120. First of all, thank you for all you guys do as a board for our kids. Thank you for the board members that have called me back and have responded to my emails, both current and past board members. I'm here today to bring some issues to the table because I didn't receive emails or phone calls back from some board members. I don't have any prepared statement to read. I just want to give you some bullet points. You guys are elected officials of the citizens of Novi, and you carry a very big burden to represent us. And you need to make sure that you think about how those individuals that elected you to those positions are going to feel regarding your actions or inactions. And it's very important. I'm here to support George Cortland, that was up here the other night, questioning your letter, Bobby, that you read regarding Dr. Matthews and the individual at stake here. First of all, I find it rather vague of how it transpired. It wasn't on the agenda, and at the end of the meeting, I think you said, well, if there's not anything else, I have a letter to read, which I don't think it was very professional as a board to address that situation. Nothing like this has ever come before the board, and if something was like this on the agenda, I'm sure that you would get some more people at the meeting and possibly address that issue. I know that I've done a lot of things here for the board or for the district over the years, and the reason why I've done them is for the kids. And I know that you guys have echoed those same things, that you are here for the kids. And I want you to think about that term for a second, okay? Because if you don't follow the rules and the procedures that you currently have before you, that we expect you to follow and enforce, how does that look like in regards to the kids? How are they going to feel? If you don't follow rules and procedures, do you expect your kids to follow the rules and procedures? I'm sure that all the teachers, principals, and administrators expect the kids to follow the rules and procedures, so I would expect you guys to follow the same. Enforcing of the policy. The enforcement of the policy is what's at hand here. The policy was written. It was revised, I believe, back in 2016. And now you're revising it again in order to possibly accommodate an individual or for something to fly underneath the radar here. And that's not right. As Mr. Dubé here pointed out, your policy prohibits. That's very concise, accurate. It doesn't give you any wiggle room, none whatsoever. In fact, one of your own board members have said that you're in violation of the policy to the point at what time the individual became a member of the family, and it's underneath these rules and restrictions. I'm not going to point out a board member, but I know that the word has been used, it smells, it stinks, okay? And not following this policy and changing that policy in order to, like I say, accommodate an individual is not appropriate. The fact is that 3120 is in existence. It's been revisited, reviewed, and now you're going to change it, and you put out the agenda late so people can't show up and address their situation here. Your
30 seconds, Mr. Coleman.
Your 3120 policy has ruled out all those individuals that you previously had, and you have some language in there that is saying now that it's going to be okay to hire a family member. I just don't believe in that, and I don't think that you should follow through with those changes, and I ask you to address that and keep the current policy intact. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. If there is no one else, that ends our comments from the audience. Next, we have our consent items. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. Consent agenda items this evening are the minutes from the April 20th, 2017 regular meeting of the board and closed session meeting minutes from April 20th, 2017.
I entertain a motion. Mr. Manna?
Motion to approve consent items 1 and 2 as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Manna and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Do we have any questions or anything about those minutes? Okay, then I'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have our action items. Dr. Matthews, I turn to you.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The first is our personnel report, and I will turn to Ms. Diglio.
Thank you, Dr. Matthews. We have 2 retirements this evening. Linda Crawford from the middle school and Mary Ann Malarkey from Novi Meadows.
Will entertain a motion? Mrs. Hood?
I make a motion that the Novi Community School District adopt the personnel report as presented.
Support.
It's been moved by Mrs. Hood and supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Any questions or comments? I'll just say I am very sorry I know that Mrs. Crawford's been here for a long time, and Mrs. Malarkey was not my daughter's 5th grade teacher, but took her to 5th grade camp and really made her feel very special because she had had pneumonia that week and really went out of her way to draw her in and make sure that she had a part of that. So both of them fabulous teachers. They will be missed. All right, without further ado, I'll call the question. All those in favor of accepting the personnel report as presented?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Next, we have our classroom furniture, which was also on our agenda last week. Mr. Barr. Oh, Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, but I will turn to Mr. Ball.
Thank you. As Ms. Murphy said, on April 20th, we presented the first reading for the replacement of classroom furniture at Novi High School. In addition, the cafeteria tables at Novi Middle School. Before you is a recommendation to approve two companies. One is VS America, not to exceed $1,200,000, and Great Lakes Furniture Supply, which would be for the cafeteria tables at the middle school, for not to exceed $70,000. Included also in your packet is a breakdown of the different types of furniture for the high school. As I mentioned last time, we did it as a not to exceed, because we're still looking at a few things of the career tech room at the high school and some purchases over at Village Oaks. So before you is a recommendation for those purchases.
I'll entertain a motion. Mr. Menon?
Okay, I move that the board approve purchase of district-wide classroom furniture to be awarded to the companies listed above. Further, that the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Operations be authorized to expend the funds from the 2014 Capital Projects Fund and Student Activities Fund.
I have support.
I support.
Mrs. Hood supports. Is there any additional questions or comments for Mr. Barr before we vote? No? Okay, all in favor?
One time.
Oh,
I just wanted to
Sorry.
thank you. I'm sorry. Want to thank you for getting me those details that I had asked from Mr. Barr. Thank you very much.
all right.
What details?
The detailed breakdown of the items that were on the punch list for
It's
this
in the board
particular
packet.
order.
Oh, those, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, without further ado, all those in favor of the classroom furniture bid?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, next we have policy updates and revisions. And we have two policies that are on for action. I believe that that's been requested that we discuss those separately. So we will, I'll take a motion on the first policy, 7540, the technology update policy. Anybody? Thank you, Mr. Miller.
Sure. I move that board adopt changes to, actually, I'm sorry, board adopt new policy 7540 as presented.
All right, I have support.
Support.
It's been moved by Mr. Menon, supported by Mrs. Stevenson. Any questions or comments on that particular policy?
This policy has been brought to the board at least.
This is the third reading
Right.
because it's a new policy, so the first two times were information and discussion. So, okay, well, if there's nothing further, we will take a vote. All those in favor of accepting the technology policy?
Aye.
Those opposed? Okay, the motion on 7540 passes 5-0. And 7540.04 is staff technology and acceptable use and safety. I would entertain a motion on that policy. First, Mr. Mena?
Motion to approve updated version of policy 7540.04 as presented.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Mena, supported by Mrs. Hood. And we have some discussion on this. Mr. Okan.
I just want to, I had asked a couple questions about this earlier, and we just wanted to clarify and validate that the definition of staff members includes administration as well as the entire staff in terms of what the proper social media use should be going forward. So, thank you.
All right. So this is under our property section, and that will take effect upon approval. So if there are no additional questions or comments, all those in favor of accepting the 7540.04, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries 5-0. All right, next for information and discussion, we have technology equipment. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy, and I will turn to Mr. Barr.
Thank you. Before you is the first read of the purchase of replacement of technology equipment for the district. You have a summary memo and a detail memo from the technology department from Juan Ciancio and Jeff Miles, who is before you. This is the replacement of devices that were primarily purchased in 2011 in terms of laptop devices and desktop computers. I will have Jeff explain in detail what we're going to do, a summary of what is being recommended. The funding, just to give you a summary, $116,000 is from what's called the TRIG rebate. TRIG is stands for Technology Readiness Infrastructure Grant, and we've been receiving from the state of Michigan for, I think, 3 years now. And I think it's out of next year's budget, I believe. But then in addition to that, you get a rebate based on the device that you purchase. So this is really $116,000 of the $400,000 is purchased with rebate funds, and then the balance is Career Tech / the Capital Projects Fund. I will turn it over to Jeff to explain what this purchase is for.
Good evening. As Mr. Barr said, we're replacing approximately 800 devices that were purchased back in 2011, and those are laptop devices that are at the end of their useful life for instruction. Those devices will be replaced with iPads and Chromebooks, and that's as a result of Wanda and the team talking with the administration, the departments, about what kind of devices they need to support instruction in 2017. So in those conversations, technology has evolved over the years, as you're all well aware, and we've been evolving into more Chrome-related devices. So as we look at the instructional needs of our students, with the move to Google Docs, Google G Suite, our secondary, 5th through 12, has requested more of the Chrome devices, while our elementary buildings are looking at more iPad devices. And that's directly related to the instructional needs in the buildings. As you recall, last year we implemented Seesaw, a digital portfolio tool, not Tulio. That uses a lot of photos and capturing tools, which makes it a lot easier to use an iPad to record those devices, upload it to the Seesaw portfolio, and then share it with the family members and the students and teachers to do some reflective analysis over what they've been doing in class. So the iPad is a real touch-friendly, user-friendly device for our primary students, where the secondary students are working mostly in the G Suite environment, and the Chromebook is the proper replacement tool for them. So those came out of direct discussions with the administration, the media specialists, the curriculum department, as we looked at what devices we need to continue to move forward. The third item that we're looking at replacing is for our CTE, our Career Technical Education labs at the high school. Part of our CTE program requires us to stay current with technology. Yet right now we're on the tail end of our compliance. So the devices that are in there were purchased again in 2011. They're desktops. We need a refresh in those certified classes to stay compliant with the regulations and the laws for CTE. So we'll be replacing the 2 lab environments with new desktops to emulate what the students would be using in the business world. So working with the teachers in the CTE department, we'll be putting forth new desktop computers for that, as well as some additional Chromebooks to support some of the instruction at the secondary level. As Mr. Barr said, we have a couple different funding sources for this project. The TRIG grant, which based upon, I think we purchased about 3,000 devices last year. We got rebates of an average of about $38 per device for each one of those devices purchased. So that enabled us to have about $116,000 that has to be expended by June 30th. That's why we're coming here with part of that purchase to use those dollars before they expire. Career Tech Education will be chipping in some money, about $8,900 from their budget and their funding for some of the Chromebooks. And then the Capital Projects Bond Fund will be chipping in about $275,000. So that's about $400,000. As you look at the devices, fortunately with technology, we get better, more robust devices as time goes on. Those 2011 devices that we purchased, those laptops, back then they were averaging about $1,000 a device. Our Chromebooks and our iPads are averaging about $300 a device. So we're doing a refresh of almost 3 to 1, in that pricing structure. So with the competitive statewide bid that's put out every year, the REMC TRIG project, we get the most aggressive prices. On top of that, we're going to be deploying these devices this summer, utilizing the staff that we have. We won't be contracting out for that as we have in the past. If you recall, when we brought on Oakland School Services our staff for Oakland Schools works year-round. Previously in Novi, not all of our staff worked year-round, so we didn't have the labor and the manpower to do deployments quite the same, so we would include that as part of the bid process to have the vendor do the deployments and installations. So that saves us about $20,000 when you look at about a $20 to $25 per device charge that the vendors charge to deploy it. That'll be savings in the bond that we'll be able to use toward other purchases. The old devices, the legacy devices, about 800 devices, will be recycled. We work with a variety of recyclers. They come in and offer us sometimes $1 or $2 recycling fee for that old device. We don't pay to have them disposed of. When in the past, a lot of the bids you put out, you would include a recycling fee in that bid package, and we'd be paying to get rid of those as part of a comprehensive package. But with Oakland Schools, we have relationships with 3 or 4 different recyclers that we work with. We give them a list of what we're looking to recycle. Some will offer you $1 or $2. Others will take off the stuff off your hands at no charge and just scrap it out. If we were to look at trying to resell that on the third-party market through auction, we'd have to wipe that off to ensure data integrity and not jeopardizing any information that was on there previously. Could take an hour or 2 to strip it down fully per device, averaging a tech of about $15 an hour. So you're looking at probably more labor to get it equipped to resell than what it's usually worth. So if there's any particular questions.
I was just chuckling because here I'm taking notes and it's like you are reading my paper. You're answering
I can see right exactly what you're, there's a mirror just above you.
So you took care of all my questions regarding the retired equipment. This question is probably for you, Dr. Matthews, and maybe you, Ms. Diglio. So you mentioned CTE, we're replacing some equipment there to stay certified. I'm a little curious because last year we lost our certified CTE teacher. Has that changed our status as far as our certification, our CTE status for our program?
The best person to ask that is the counseling staff at the high school, and I know that we've been working through that, so I can get that answer for you. I know there's been some adjustments there.
I believe I can answer that one. The 2 courses that we're certified for in CTE and get reimbursement on are the business courses, and those are the business labs that we'll be replacing. I believe it is
that status has not changed.
That one hasn't changed.
That status has not
Correct,
changed.
yeah.
So those are the programs that we're looking at as far as the CTE funding, not the CAD drawing programs,
Okay.
engineering.
Thank you.
Are there other questions, Mr. O'Connor?
So we're looking at it, the last time, we're looking at about 6 years in terms of life cycle for these laptops. What are we projecting for the iPads and the Chromebooks?
Sure. So a Chromebook, the way Google puts it now is they support the device for 6 years. It'll take refreshes for Chrome, the operating system, for 6 years. Now, in a one-to-one, or in the environment we have, we're projecting about 5-year life cycle on the Chromebook. Others, where you take them home and it's a one-to-one type environment, we project about 3 years. Apple's a little harder because of the way they do their iOS updates. They're running between 3 and 5 years. It just kind of depends on how robust Apple gets and how big those apps grow. So if you remember your phone, we used to get away with 8 gig phones. Now we're buying 64 gig phones. So these we're projecting about 3 years. But with the new releases with Apple, again, we were paying $600 back in 2010 when the first iPad came out. We're paying $300 a device.
So, Mr. Barr, did that put us in a pickle if the life cycle is only 3 or 4 years as opposed to 6, dollar-wise?
No, because remember we purchased, the cost was about 1/3 of what we were anticipating when we were going to replace these.
So it'll be easy to replace in 3 or 4 years?
We have enough money still on this bond, to actually do another refresh of much of the equipment, if necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Are there other questions that the board has? Well, thank you for being here. I would agree, every time I was thinking of a question, the next paragraph or the next comments were directly related to what I was thinking, so it was a little freaky up here.
That's much due to Ms. Ciancio's work, and we're
Okay.
very
She knows
fortunate
us
to have her.
apparently.
She knows you very well.
Thank you very much for the thorough explanation and the presentation and for being here tonight. We do
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So this will come back to the board at the May 18th meeting for approval.
Right. So if any board members do think of things that they didn't get an opportunity to ask tonight, if you could just get those to Dr. Matthews or Mr. Barr so that they can be addressed before we come back to vote on that. Okay, next we have information and discussion of the Oakland Schools budget. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I will shortly turn this over to Mr. Barr. The reason this is on our agenda is per the Michigan Revised School Code, Section 380.624, the Oakland Schools budget must be presented to Oakland County's 28 school districts by May 1st each year. And this was in the district's hands in April. And the district has now received 3 sets of the fiscal year 17-18 proposed budget document. And Mr. Barr has reviewed the document and will address issues and concerns. And so I will turn this over to Mr. Barr.
Okay.
Thank you. Included in your electronic board packet is the 303-page, bless their heart, board packet, or board budget document, sorry. As Dr. Matthews said, the school districts are required to either support or approve or disapprove the budget by June 1st. Only the general fund budget is required. It should be recommended by the school districts. Included in your packet, I have put together a summary list, and Mr. O'Connor, I kind of followed your format from last year and made the changes as necessary. A few things to point out. Number one, Oakland Schools is one of a very few number of school districts in the state of Michigan, I think one of 3 at a minimum, that is a AAA rated school district by Moody's. That's one level higher than us. So they obviously are financially prudent. A few general fund highlights. They have a modest growth in the property tax revenue of 1.75% of taxable values. That, again, is for the county. In Novi, it's over 3%, but it's a countywide assessment. There is no change in state aid again because we have not seen a state aid bill, and typically over the last several years there has not been a change. Again, they are funded primarily by property taxes and not so much by state aid. You can see their revenue is just about $20 million with expenditures about $20.7 million. They have included in their budget a 1% pay increase with steps subject to bargaining. Their steps as a percentage of their total payroll is less than 0.5%, meaning a majority of their staff are in the top step. So their steps might be 3 or 4%, but since so few get them, it's about less than 0.5% in addition to a 1% increase. The MIPSR's increase that we've talked about before, the rate goes to 25.5%. They would end the year with 16.5% fund balance, and there's some minor staff additions, and they're actually both about 1 FTE, but the portion that's allocated to the general fund is half an FTE for a district school service consultant and about 1/8 as an executive assistant to the financial service department. I also include in there, as Mr. O'Connor did in the past, some of the major programs that Oakland Schools has. And I would tell you the service that we're receiving overall from Oakland Schools is fabulous. I want to point out, I'll just publicly state that yesterday at our annual conference at Michigan School Business Officials, Mr. Bob Moore, who's Deputy Superintendent, received a Lifetime Achievement Award. And he's the one that's overall over this whole business office at Oakland Schools. And I was amazed he has 47 years. So again, bless his heart, because none of us are going to get to 47 years, I don't think. So we're very happy and supportive of their work they give us and their budget they presented to us. I was not able to attend the budget presentation to business managers. Deanna Shoemaker from the business office was, and I've had conversations with their business office subsequently. Mr. Cook has also been presented with a copy of the budget, as have all of you electronically. At this meeting, if you have any questions, I can address them or follow up, and I'd ask you to vote to either approve or not approve it at the following board meeting.
Do we have comments or questions? Mr. O'Connor.
Mr. Barr was kind enough not to say it, so I will. This is really a stupid state law, because this is in essence a ceremonial vote. It really doesn't matter what we have to do or say, but that we have to vote for it.
That's right.
So I do concur with Mr. Barr that Oakland County has been, over the last couple of years, much more fiscally responsible than during their problems during the lost decade. My one question, however, is, and again, it's more philosophical. I noticed that in their budget that includes a 1% across the board raise plus steps for employees and the hard cap. Are they still in deficit spending with their general fund or not?
They would have this year a deficit spend of just under $1 million, but they would end the year with a 16.5% fund balance, even with that deficit spend. So, there is a purpose to have fund balance, not just have it sit there, but to obviously do some compensation. I would say that's a pretty moderate or mild compensation.
I would concur. I mean,
yes.
I've historically voted against these budgets because it hasn't been as conservative as this. But yes, the 1% and moving down that fund balance to 16.7 is well within the range. Before, they've been sloppy in the past, but for the most part, I've looked at this and it looks pretty clean.
Although you're not voting on the special ed budget, I'd like to point out that is where we
It's just the general ed.
This is just general fund, but I wanted to point out just as a side note that special ed is where we receive the countywide special ed millage, and it's expected that we're going to receive about a 2.34% increase in our allocation, which is good. I mean, their board knows that there's no reason to keep a huge fund balance in the special ed fund, although there are programming needs obviously in special ed to address. So that's not something that you would vote on, but it's just an FYI for yourself. Then we'll include that.
And they're usually historically below 5 or around, right?
The fund balance?
Yeah, on special ed, because they do
Yeah,
to.
it depends
they do try to
upon
get as
what
much
future
money.
facility needs there could be in the constituent districts.
Yeah.
I know that I think in Hazel Park there's some potential needs to service center program students, but yeah, they keep that somewhere around 5%.
Which makes sense because it's,
Because they're distributing it to the locals.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, any additional comments, questions? This will come back to us.
At the May 18th meeting, because the board has to vote whether to approve or not approve before June 1st.
Okay, so my suggestion would be if you do think of something, fire a question off to Mr. Barr or to Dr. Matthews, and they will get the answers to the entire board. Okay, our next item on our agenda, it looks like a robotics field trip. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. The Novi High School first robotics team, Frog Force, has been invited to visit China to aid a rookie robotics team complete their robot build and then compete together in a competition from June 2nd, 2017 to June 4th, 2017. The first Sino-U.S. United project is sponsoring an all-in-country travel, lodging, and food, and the robotics team will pay for the airfare for this trip. Students will leave on May 24th, 2017 and return on June 5th, 2017, missing 8 days of school. 4 chaperones will accompany the 6 robotics students on this trip. Lodging details for the trip in all locations, Canada, Shanghai, and a name I can't pronounce, Shizhuang, have not been solidified. While the students are in China, they will lodge with students' families in their respective homes, while the chaperones will stay in a hotel. Current background checks have been requested of all chaperones. Details about lodging and transportation have been requested but have not been provided at this time. The 2017 Michigan First Robotics trip to China is coming before the Board of Education tonight for information and discussion, with approval at the next meeting of the Board of Education on May 18th. We did receive some additional information. The 6 students who are going, 2 are seniors, 2 juniors, and 1 sophomore. 1 other junior was selected but has changed her mind, so there will be 5 students who will be going. A survey was sent to all the seniors and group leads on the team of the respondents. The ones that were chosen were due to their positions on the team and their dedication to the team. The in-country expenses are being paid by firstchina.org, which is the robotics group in China. And the First Robotics has been involved, or the Frog Force has been involved with First Robotics for 17 years. And this is our first experience with this new partner organization. And so we bring this tonight for information and discussion, and would request a vote on this on the May 18th board meeting.
What an opportunity. Do board members have questions, concerns they'd like addressed before this comes back for a vote? Mr. Mennel?
Just curious about the makeup of the chaperones. Are those parents, some of the parent leads that we have currently?
Those are some of the parent leads, yes.
Okay.
I just have a couple quick questions. Obviously, if you've got seniors going, they're going to miss their graduation ceremony, right?
They will.
Which that's their choice.
It is their choice,
Okay.
and they understand that.
And how are parents responding to the opportunity? Are they eager to see? I have not personally heard from the parents, and so my sense would be that they are excited for this opportunity for their students, or they would have changed their mind and not allowed their students to go. But I have not personally heard from any of the parents on this trip. Okay. Will we have the information about lodging before the next meeting, perhaps?
We hope that we will have that information. Our belief is that we will. We have asked for that information, and so they have said that they would provide that for us before our next meeting.
Okay. So, any additional information that we'd like about this, Mrs. Hood?
I just had a question. I mean, this time frame, they must have already bought their tickets. And,
Yes.
Okay.
The reason it comes to the board is because of our policy, that the board has to approve all out-of-country field trips.
Right. Okay.
Okay. Well, it sounds like a wonderful opportunity, and certainly if this partnership is another one that gets established that, leads to greater opportunities for maybe greater kids, that, that might be awesome too. I would love to hear, since this is kind of this first partnership, to get a report, back at the end of the time. I know it'll be summer, but it'll be nice to at least get a little bit of a feedback from the parents about what worked, what didn't work, and hopefully just some information about their time. I mean, do any of them speak Japanese? I mean, Chinese?
Chinese? I do not know.
So it will be an interesting cross-cultural experience for our students, which, we're all about providing greater opportunity. What a wonderful thing that they're helping to cover the cost of the trip for the students too. That's a very seems like it's an unusual thing to me that somebody would reach out to us, but I think that our reputation clearly has gone before us. So wonderful. Okay, well, we will see that next week. If questions or concerns do pop up that the board has, please send those to Dr. Matthews so we have time to get those addressed before that comes back to us for a vote. Okay, next we have several policy updates. We have policy 0100. These are all for discussion and discussion only, so they will also come back next week. So we have several definitions, and some of these have changed as a result of Neola updates that we have, we have new language in some of our policies that they have sent to us that needs to be changed in order to reflect that. And then we did have a board member that suggested that in policy 3120 there was a definition of immediate family, and that occurs in other places. So moving that into definitions makes sense, and then we don't have to continually have additional verbiage in our policies. So that one was changed. So do people have questions or comments about the policy 0100? Yes.
There's definitions in there for immediate family, I understand that, but then there's one for relative. And it just says we're going to follow state and federal law. Do we know what state and federal law is in terms of a definition of a relative?
Yeah, we do have that, I believe. Okay, you know what, Mrs. Holly, you're the one that's done research on this. Why don't you come to the podium for a minute so that everybody can hear that? Because I know that you looked up the IRS definition as well as what state and federal law was, and then that occurs. Did you cite that at the bottom of the? Is it cited? Yeah.
Yeah. The definition of relative and immediate family is exactly the same. The IRS definition is children, parents, grandchildren, brother-in-law, sister-in-law, or not brother-in-law, but daughter-in-law, son-in-law, and also all those dependents that you can claim on your taxes. And they are all listed right there in immediate family.
Okay, so does the
So
question...
those two words are just used interchangeably throughout our policies?
Yes, they are.
Okay, thank you.
So this definition policy is to try to identify terms that are used throughout our policies.
Other questions? Mr.
So
Bennett?
if I, based on what I just heard, then my assumption is, and I'd have to look at it again, that we're going to have 2 blocks of text in definition. They basically have the identical definition. That's immediate, family, and relative, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
So that's the first policy.
Okay, I
that's
did
come-
just notice in there, though, that immediate family, that the actual change to the policy is actually typed in there under the definition as opposed to the definition. I'm not sure how that happened, but.
Yeah, that's why I was trying to clarify.
Yeah, we
what
just need,
state-
the immediate family includes portion of that.
Okay.
So if we could,
So we can change that?
yeah, that, we don't need the.
Okay. Yep, the other
The
section.
policy wording in there.
Okay.
We just need the remainder. So if we could get that cleaned up and
Yep,
then get
we
that
can.
out to the board, and then if there are additional questions or comments about
Okay.
that particular one, we can get those back. So I apologize that I didn't pick up on that when I reread those today. The second one is policy 3120, employment of professional staff. We also have 4120 that we added to this because in our discovery of where else immediate family or relative occurred, it was also in 4120, so the language there is similar to what 3120 is. So those are on tonight for discussion. We
And they have come, this is the second time they've come to the board for
Yeah.
discussion.
Yes, so the history of that is that at the last meeting, Mr. Cook had some questions we were supposed to vote, so we tabled them in order to address those. So, and now we've bumped these back to because of some additional dialogue that we had about changing taking the definition out. So it's just discussion. So the board members have, yes, Mr. Miller.
I do have, I did email our board president just to give her a heads up that I did find something else in this policy that I at least wanted to have some discussion on. I think when we were looking at making changes as policy, we went ahead in our policy committee looking at a lot of the wording that's being used in other districts. And I think one district, specifically, we borrowed some language here with regards to the disclosure statement, which I think is a great piece of policy to add in here. The way ours reads, though, says board members and the superintendent shall publicly disclose their relationship to a candidate. I'm not sure if that was how the discussion went when we were bringing it up, and I'm wondering if we could change that to say board members, superintendent, and cabinet members. I just wanted to make that distinction if that was.
Okay, so just to clarify, then you would like to change the second paragraph of the blue to read board members. If we said, and if we just said in cabinet, aren't you part of cabinet? Or do you feel we need to specify?
Whatever makes sense.
Okay.
And that change would my recommendation, anyway, that change would need to be made both on 3120 and 4120.
Right. So just to clarify that, maybe we need to look at our other language that covers both to make sure that we're using consistent terminology. So we will do a little research and see where we use some of that verbiage, and then that would identify that board members and the superintendent shall disclose the immediate family connection. Correct?
Right.
Just for clarity.
It may be cleaner to actually identify the positions because cabinet is not in our definitions policy.
Okay. Okay.
And so.
And the superintendents or assistant superintendents.
Right.
Okay. And or assistant superintendents. Mrs. Hood, did you have a question?
Just a question related to that, maybe the paragraph above, the immediate family of board members, that one.
Mm-hmm.
Did we say we're going to take out all the mother, father, brother?
Yes.
Immediate family, okay, thank you.
Because that's in definitions now.
That is currently in our definitions, so it doesn't need to appear in both 3120 and 4120. Is it okay if we discuss those simultaneously? Or is the board comfortable with that? One of them deals with support staff and the other deals with professional staff.
Is it conceptually the same thing?
Yes,
Okay, so, okay.
yes, it's conceptually the same thing. So same exact language appears.
Just a different employment of a different function.
Correct.
In the district.
In our policies, we have a section for professional staff, and then we have a section for support staff. And so the language is identical. And so that's why we thought it would be appropriate to deal with both of them.
We had said that we wanted to clean up language and clarify 3120. Are you saying that we also had that same concerns with 4120 as well?
The old language was identical in 4120.
Gotcha.
Yeah, exactly. For other discussion on that, I know that some of you might have had the opportunity. I brought the changes that Mr. Hood had suggested, or Mr. Hood. I'm sorry. Mr. Cook had suggested some changes as well that he, some edits that he suggested. I didn't know if the other board members had an opportunity to look at those. He had suggested in the first, I'll say the second paragraph of that, instead of saying the board shall approve, that the board may approve, but I think because it's law that we have to approve, that the shall actually might be more appropriate, but I know that's a law that you enjoy, Mr. O'Connor, that we have on the books. So is there?
It is I would suggest to the board that should be a shall, because those are the that's what the state law requires, and those are the conversations we've had with the board about why we bring those names to the board.
And also this language is from Neola, who we're paying to make sure that we're compliant with what we need to do. So I think some of that we just need to be a little cautious about those changes. There were a couple other things. The first box that's checked, such approval shall be given only to those candidates for appointment recommended by the superintendent. That's referring to that upper shall. But Mr. Cook had suggested that it be changed to the board may only consider those candidates for employment recommended by the superintendent. I don't know how that impacts the interpretation of that. Those are I'm a little reluctant because it's language that Neola has given us. So my reluctance is really a little bit about that, but do board members have strong feelings about?
Well, I wondered what I wondered what the genesis of that change was, because it seems like they're kind of saying the same thing. The board may only consider those candidates.
I'd be more comfortable deferring to Mr. Cook, and unfortunately he's not here to.
Right.
I'd hate to guess.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so the only okay. I guess the only challenge is that this is going to be for action next time, and if board members then decide that we need to table it again for discussion, that'll be like the fifth time it's on our agenda.
We could always approve it with an amendment next meeting if we feel we need to. So.
Okay. I will say that he had a couple edits on just the capitals. It was a kind of, I don't want to say a silly thing, but it was, he caught that there were under requirements for highly qualified status. They don't capitalize. I think that's an easy change to make, so it says full state certification. I'm on page 4 of 5. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. So those bullet points, the first word is not capitalized, and I know he had that as that's an easy change that I think we can all agree might make it a little cleaner. But that's fine. There were a couple other things. He had suggested we leave in the policy about not operating retroactively, but policies can't operate retroactively, which I think that I wasn't completely aware of that. So I think that was good information to get. So I'm glad that he brought that up, because I think we've now discovered that once the policy is in place, and that's where it stands going forward, so it can't operate retroactively. So I'm trying to read the rest of his suggestions here. Let's see. I mean, he had adding back in the relatives of board members may be employed by the board, but it looks to me like that's a little, I'm not sure if you intended to do that. So I guess I could have that conversation with him a little bit more about those things, if there's things that he feels strongly about. Yes.
And I just wondered on page 3, that middle section with the A, B, and C subparagraphs, why the change from employ to recommend?
That's a good question. Mr.
I would assume it's because the state law says we do the hiring, not the superintendent.
Okay.
Which
Oh.
is a stupid law.
So how do people feel about that particular change?
I can live with it. I just wondered what.
Yeah, or the district may employ. Oh, we don't. Do we have that section actually now? I don't think we have that. Let me see if we have that checked now in our. I'm not sure that was something that we have checked. Oh, yes, we do. So. So we need to maybe have a call to Neola to see if changing that language is problematic, if it needs to say, because sometimes they've told us that they use district and sometimes they use other language specifically for specific reasons.
So we'll call.
So can we make a phone call to Neola to see if it's problematic to change that to the superintendent may recommend? I mean, or if it needs to say the district may employ. Because legally, this is talking about when we can employ teachers that aren't certified. So my suggestion would be that we make sure that because my guess is that's covered somewhat by law, we need to make sure that we're clear about that. So if we find out that can be different and it can say something different, then we might have to come back to the board too.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
So when we were going, so in B, I know I've been doing some reading, and I don't know if it's been changed yet, but they were talking about possibly lowering the number of hours for substitute teachers. So like at the point when that occurs, will Neola just make sure that we change that? Okay.
Yeah, they think that's going to pass too. That was at the legislative conference, so we'll have to revisit it once that passes to alter that. So. Well, okay. Since it's going to be coming back to us too, if at that point in time, if there's language that we need to change, it looks like we could do it then also.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So, Mr. O'Connor.
So that's all the nitty gritty. Let's take a step back and talk about this philosophically.
Okay.
At the April 13th board meeting, Mrs. Wildinsky said that we were making revisions to 3120 because they found it to be needing some cleanup and maybe some clarification. Clearly, the wording of this policy was not clear. I guess we can include 4120 as well. So my question is, okay, if that's what we're going to do, that's fine, but it looks like to me that the policy committee has actually changed the rule and is recommending a change in the rule here, which really comes down to an anti-nepotism clause to a nepotism clause. And I'm just wondering why, when the original intent was just to clean up the verbiage of the policy.
Well, so I'll attempt to answer that since Ann is not able to be here tonight. So as we started discussing the language in the policy, we started having conversation. There was confusion, obviously, because one said that it's prohibited and the next said that relatives of board members could be employed. So right there's some conflicting language. So, but as we started in the discussion, we just started talking about kind of the intent behind it, right? And also the need to be able to hire teachers that are highly qualified. We have less teachers in the pool nowadays, and so some of that discussion came into changes to our hiring process in 2014, and you know how that has changed the way we hire and the difference in that, and quite honestly, the investigator had said that he had a lot of appreciation for the hiring process after going through it and talking about it. So some of those conversations started to occur, and we started looking at what the intent of it is to still protect against nepotism, but also be able to hire the best people for jobs. So that's how it kind of, I don't want to say morphed, but that's how the dialogue kind of occurred. So there were a lot of different conversations. We looked at nepotism, anti-nepotism across other districts and started pulling in policies from other places. Some districts don't have any policy against it at all. Others allow, a lot of them allow board members and administrators as long as they recluse themselves from the vote. So we started looking at language and trying to figure out how we could still have the flexibility to hire the best people and keep the best people, and not, and still protect against the possibility that you would have. I mean, I guess the intent was hiring substandard teachers based on a relationship was kind of the intent of nepotism, right? That you would not hire teachers just based on a relationship. And so I think that the language that was suggested still has that in it to protect against that, but then also gives us the flexibility to hire good people and keep them.
So the premise of this change, then, you're saying, is because we institute a better hiring process in 2014. I'm not sure how that's applicable, but the other reason you're saying is because we've got a supply and demand problem. I mean, the last I knew of, we usually get 100 teachers to apply to an elementary school position on a regular basis. So I'm trying to understand the problem statement.
Right. Okay. I appreciate the question. Legal counsel recommended we make changes. Said the language is problematic. It can also be interpreted in ways that could apply to other situations.
Right. I understand that.
So,
but that's different than changing the rule. I don't believe legal counsel said. I mean, we have the option to change the rule if we want to, but
no, that is very true. I think that's the recommendation. The recommendation from the committee is to look at how we do things. Is there a need? I mean, we're looking at a policy. Is there a need for a change to this policy? Absolutely. I mean, we do have a violation right now. And potentially some other things that other people could interpret or that we're violating. So it needed to be changed. And so the best way to change it was really to talk about the whole picture and what's the intent behind it. Is it really because we don't want to hire anybody that is related to anybody that works here, or is it that we don't want to hire unqualified people based on that relationship? Mr. Mena, you can pipe in any time because you were on the committee. So is there other things that I'm missing that maybe were discussed that?
I recall that, I do recall a conversation in council from our attorney saying that this particular policy was confusing as written and to a certain extent in conflict. And that's really was the initial impetus for us to look at it. Of course, we have an issue at hand that we need to work through as well. So we went ahead and we looked at policies from other districts, and that's why we came up with this one. So we brought it forth before the board to see if there was any other concerns that or any other additional language they wanted to have on here, and that's really where we're at today.
Mr. O'Connor.
Well, from my perspective, I take issue with the fact that we have a violation. We have a violation of this policy, the way I read the policy, at the end of the school year. We're not in violation of this policy at this stage, unless I'm misreading what our attorney said. The violation comes at the end of the year when we have to make decisions if we're going to keep this policy the way it is. So I don't understand how the violation even plays into this. To me, the broader issue is what we want to do with policy 3120, whether we want a nepotism clause or not a nepotism clause. And I have a concern because I haven't been convinced in listening to Mrs. Murphy and Mr. Mena that we need to change this. I mean, the intent of this, it's definitely poorly written. It definitely needs to be clarified, but the intent was, an anti-nepotism clause, and to change that, I think, really will damage the credibility of our hiring process. And I don't see the merit of it. I understand your argument. I just don't think we have a supply and demand problem. If we did, I certainly would consider it, but I don't see where there's a problem. I just don't see where there's a problem. I think it's an issue of whether this board wants a nepotism clause or an anti-nepotism clause in this policy, and that's the decision we have to make.
There is language that that protects against that. I guess you're saying you don't believe it's strong enough, but it says that immediate family of board members or administrators may be employed by the board, provided the staff member of the board or administrator involved does not influence the process of their selection. And then it goes on to say...
Can we even guarantee that?
Well, we say again, furthermore, the affected board member or administrator may not advocate in any way in the discussion or vote on the employment when a
Can we
conflict of
guarantee
interest is
that?
involved.
Clearly, historically, that hasn't happened. I mean, those are words.
Well, I think it gives teeth to if that does happen and we discover that it happens, then there's clearly a violation. And
I would argue I even opened that door. I'm not understanding the problem statement to change the language. I guess that's where I'm coming from.
Well, one more thing. The attorney said the minute the marriage happened is when you have a violation. It wasn't till the end of the school year. We could keep her, obviously, because it's kind of an emergency because she's already been in the classroom. You're going to pull
And
a
that's in
teacher
our
out.
policy.
Yeah,
Right.
you're going to pull a teacher out of the classroom. So, we do need to address it, and we need to decide: do we let a good teacher go because we have a policy against hiring somebody that's related because she got married?
So you're saying that the problem statement is we're then changing this policy because of this one situation?
I'm saying that situation could occur again. It's possible that it could occur again, and you're going to have to let people go, and you have to decide if it's more important to put good people in front of in front of the classroom. If that's your goal, is to be able to hire the best people, then I think we need to have the flexibility to do that. Do we want there to be undue influence? Absolutely not. I don't think any one of us wants there to be undue influence by myself or anybody else in terms of somebody coming before us. I don't think that's something that is championed by anybody. But the language, I think that as it stands, to me, addresses that and does give teeth to, that's the philosophy of the board. We do not want undue influence on the employment process.
And I guess my concern is that what's in the best interest of the students? Does it matter that they're related? Or is it that my child is getting the best education? Because at some point, we're going to say, I feel like as long as the person is not the supervisor of that individual, I'm fine with it if it's in the best interest of my child. But if it's not, then, what are we looking at here? Are we looking at because they're married? Are they related? Or are we looking at what's best for our children? So we got to think about what is our real cause and our real purpose here.
And I appreciate and respect that perspective. Again, when you say things like what's in the best interest of our children, you need to balance that versus we're picking, among 100 candidates for a position on average in the elementary school. So I question from a supply and demand perspective whether we are losing quality if we were to exclude one person, that if we have, a immediate family or relative relationship, and balance that versus, the can of worms that could result in hiring a family member. For example, you're saying not an immediate supervisor, but specifically in this case, it's the boss's boss. That could open, other problems that I think we could avoid if we kept the policy the same. Again, it's a balance between the two. And I appreciate the highest quality teachers, the highest quality education. I appreciate that. Again, if that was our problem, I'd buy your argument.
I think the other thing is that we can't just look at it as though it's just this elementary school area. I mean, I think we got a late thing from Sheila about a neighboring district that has a principal. It sounds like they have a principal that they want to hire, but it's the board member's husband. So they are looking to change their policy because they really think he's the best person for the position.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute. I read that article, and isn't it interesting that they're addressing this issue on 3120 during their hiring process because it's a problem as opposed to doing it a year and a half later. Doesn't that say something about our hiring process? That we're dealing with this after the fact, where we have a violation. I can appreciate the fact that Ferndale's dealing with this and doing it at the right time. We didn't, because we didn't know about it.
All of that is true.
I thought during this hiring process that we're talking about, there was no relationship. There was no
No,
at the time. So it wasn't a violation at the time. It was subsequent to that it came up as a conflict. But I would say, if I may speak now, sorry.
Yes, Ms.
So I've been kind of looking around on this type of issue, and Mrs. Diglio and our staff recruits teachers, and we are approaching there. We're going to have a problem. We're going to have a teacher shortage. I think every expert in the field is warning about that and anticipating that. And so it makes sense to me that we think through this, set our parameters, set our safeguards, acknowledge that we are confident in our hiring process now before it becomes a desperate situation where we have 30 candidates and maybe 4 are really the type that we're looking at or looking for. So I think it is timely to do it now before we get to a crisis point. And many districts are doing it, meaning setting their parameters, understanding what their goals and not mission are, but what their goals are in their hiring and making accommodations like this. We're getting a smaller and smaller population of really outstanding educators. That makes sense to accommodate that.
Other comments? I mean, I would say I think we actually did run into some trouble this year at the high school in trying to find a teacher that was qualified to teach something. And I guess I look at that situation and I say if we had, there's certain critical areas, Mandarin, Chinese, trying to find some of those teachers. If it was somebody related to us and they were the best person, would we be going back and looking at this policy because we know we need somebody? I mean, so doing it now proactively at a time that we were already going to be looking at it anyways, in order to address some of those things, I don't think is a bad practice. It is unfortunate, Dennis, that we didn't more proactively take a look at it. I think that the policy committee is committed to cleaning things up and really looking at all the policies because there's probably other areas that are problematic, quite honestly, in our policies right now. I mean, this is a big area. Mr. O'Connor.
Well, I would support this policy and put those nepotism clauses in there if we include a clause that it's for Mandarin Chinese teachers. Then I would support it because that's a supply and demand issue. That's my point.
Okay. I appreciate your point of view. This will be back to us. Nobody has anything further to talk about with this policy. And 4120, they'll both appear back on the next meeting in May for action. So we will take action on those at the next meeting. All right. Our next policy is, I'm going to move on to 7000.06, new broadcast. It's a broadcast policy for board meetings.
Currently, we do not have a broadcast policy, and so this would be a new policy, so we would bring this tonight and on May 18th and not vote on it until the first meeting in June. But it states that we will, to the extent available, regular Board of Education meetings will be taped, and they will appear on the district website and cable channel unedited. And as you know, we're trying to close caption those now as well to meet our ADA requirements. So this would be a new policy.
So this will appear again for discussion at the next meeting since it's new. Board members have comments or Mr. O'Connor?
So as written, I don't have a problem with this, but as I mentioned in our board workshop last Saturday, my concern, the problem statement with this is proper documentation of meetings that may not be taped. I don't know if that should be part of this policy or is it separate, but I'd like to see some verbiage that guarantees we have some proper documentation of meetings that are not broadcasted or taped, open meetings that are not broadcasted or taped.
I think that's something we could include in our administrative procedures for this. or even in our own board procedures, our board procedure manual, we could include a piece of that.
Well, here's one of my concerns then, and I don't understand the process, so please help me with this. We could put that in our board procedures, but we would have to reach a consensus of the board.
Mm-hmm.
And if not all of us agree that there should be documentation or some kind of recording of those meetings that are not taped or broadcast, then this policy, from my perspective, doesn't have any teeth, and why even have it? So I understand what you're saying, but I don't know how it solves. I don't know how this policy solves the problem. I mean, couldn't we say in our policy that we'll record and document meetings that are not taped and broadcast? I mean, is that
Record via tape record or?
To me, as I mentioned last Saturday to all of you, I just think we need to have, for the good of all of us, just have some kind of documentation so that when we go out of a meeting, we all are on the same page.
Okay. We could look to add a statement.
I'm thinking audio recording, but really it's any kind of well, of course, I don't know what kind of documentation there would be, but yeah.
So why don't, since this is coming back for discussion again, why don't we add a sentence? Ms. Holly and I could add a sentence.
You know what, May 11th, the committee's meeting again,
Oh, yeah.
so we could actually have that discussion at the meeting, and then maybe either wordsmith it or figure out if that's a direction we want to go, or if it makes more sense.
If the rest of the board, I'm just proposing that we document it.
Because it's not going to be voted on May 18th.
Right, okay. Is everybody comfortable with that, or have additional? Okay, so if there are other things before May 11th, we can go over those then. The next one is our technology privacy. It's 7540.01. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. This really tries to clean up this policy by using the phrase district technology resources that subsequently has been defined in the bylaws on definitions. And so you'll see it included throughout this policy in place of computers, electronic mail, voicemail, those kinds of things. And it also identifies that so as you look through it, that's the primary change to this policy.
Right. Questions or comments about this policy? This is kind of straightforward, I think, in many respects, that we have to make changes because technology is changing so rapidly. So this allows us to cover all that without specifying it as well. And then to Mr. Mena's point about it's easier to go in and change the definitions than to go back and rework an entire policy as well. So that will come back before us. If anybody does have questions that they think of between now and the next meeting, please get them to the policy committee maybe before May 11th so that they can address it at that time. Next we have revised policy. This is a technology update policy 7540.02. Dr. Matthews.
And again, this policy broadens. It's no longer the district webpage that we're focused on. It's web content, services, and apps. And so it broadens the policy because the web has become so much more important, and both students and staff are using the web in a variety of educational ways. And so this policy kind of defines that and extends the definition from just the district web page to web services for both students and staff.
Questions or concerns about this policy that the board has?
So this is a revision. It would come back for a vote on May 18th.
Anything additional on that one? All right, if there is, May 11th, I'm going to remind you again, that's when the next Board Governance and Policy Committee will be meeting. All right. Our next item on our agenda this evening is comments from the audience. This is the second opportunity for comments from the audience related to anything within our jurisdiction. Same rules apply. I won't repeat them.
Hello again. Just a couple more things that I didn't get a chance to add is George Cortland asked 4 or 5 questions, and I believe that the board should be transparent in regarding those answers and publicly communicate those answers via either, i.e. a website or to the paper or novi.org or whatever, so that we know what those answers were as a public. Another transparent thing, I know that Dr. Matthews has suggested that there's a survey coming up and that people are going to take it, and he asked for the public's and the students' help to improve the district. At the same time, I know in past years, survey results weren't communicated and transparent with the public. I suggest if you're asking the public for their input, they are obligated to see the answers that everybody puts down. The results and any items or questions or comments should also be posted in order to be transparent. Sounds like from the comments here, a number of board members were aware that there was a violation of the policy, and I'm sure that the lawyer that you guys hired communicated that to the point. So again, I don't believe that I haven't heard of any teacher shortages like you mentioned. You've gotten a number of different applicants. A teacher shortage means you have no applicants to fill the position. If that point comes, I'm sure you're going to hire some possibly less qualified teachers than you would normally do. So I don't believe in changing a policy in order to accommodate or have people fly underneath the radar. I thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you. Our next item on our agenda is our superintendent's report. Dr. Matthews.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I do not have a report this evening.
Okay. Too much going on in the high school that they covered all of your
They did.
topics probably.
Under.
Okay, we have an opportunity for administrative reports. Dr. Matthews.
Mr. Barr, Ms. Diglio, or Dr. Weber, if they have anything to add this evening, they can feel free to add it at this time.
Thank you. Construction continues with the classroom additions at Village Oaks Elementary School. Maybe not today with all the rain, but believe it or not, they actually get work done in the rain, along with other projects in the district, and construction is on schedule. The House and Senate passed their respective school aid budgets this week, basically the same as I've presented to you in the past. The State Revenue Estimating Conference will be in a couple weeks, which gives an estimate of where they feel the revenue falls for this year and their estimates for next year, and then the budget work will continue with a budget expected by June 1st. They're very proud to say they get a budget 3 or 4 months before October 1st. However, our fiscal year starts on July 1st. So we'll take June 1st. We would love April 1st, but we're happy with that. So we'll see where the budget lands. We are deep into the 17-18 budget process, and we'll be bringing that first reading of the budget to the board on June 1st. This week I attended the Michigan School Business Officials Annual Conference, myself and 1,400 of my friends. On Tuesday, it was all focused on school finance, mostly dealing with the state and national economy and the budgets. We actually had the state budget director there. We had some exciting presentations. During the legislative update, and I'm sure Ms. Diglio will speak about this as she has many times, there was much discussion about the state and national teacher shortage. This is at a business meeting. At a business meeting, we're talking about this. And just a couple facts that they brought up, and it's similar to what Ms. Diglio's talked about how the program enrollment in Michigan schools is less than 50% now versus 2010. These are facts. Teacher salary is much lower, adjusted for inflation, than it was several years ago. Vesting, which is when you're entitled to a pension, we have tied for the highest vesting period in the country. The average is 6.6. We're 10. We have 10 years to vest, along with about 12 other states. They estimate in Michigan only 45% of Michigan teachers will vest. I would contend that was over 90% not long ago. And they project if this trend continues, that in 2018, the U.S. will have a shortage of 112,000 teachers. I was able to spend a lot of time with the CFO of Detroit Community School District last night. And just when you think you have a problem, you talk and hear about the situation they're facing. When you have 200 or 300 classrooms that you don't have teachers for. Hence, their average class size is now 31, which it wouldn't be 31. So, and to hear the rest of the issues, everyone has issues. They have real issues. I mean, real big issues. We all have something, but it'll really put you in your place to hear what's going on there. And every kid and every student deserves what we have in Novi, and no matter where you are in the country. And we're very happy with what we have. But it was a quite fascinating conference, and we look forward to seeing some real good information from the state in the near future.
Thank you.
Ms. Diglio or Dr. Weber?
I have a few things. I'd like to, first of all, we're busy with a lot of things. It's kind of the trifecta in HR. We have evaluation, staffing, and hiring all kind of coming to a head, and that keeps us busy. We're up to 14 retirements right now. So the staffing piece is kind of tricky because as people continue to put their notice in, we're sad to see our experience go, and then we are looking to replace it. So a lot of that is communication with Mr. Barr and myself, and then to all the administrators. Sometimes on a weekly, even daily basis, we're talking with our administrators and talking staffing. So that is ongoing. On Monday, Dr. Weber, Dr. Matthews, and I had an opportunity to meet with Brian Whiston, who is the state superintendent. Our purpose for that meeting was to talk to Superintendent Whiston about flexibility in the Michigan Merit Curriculum. Right now, 18 of our kids' 22 credits are required by the state. And while we are very, very big on accountability and our kids work hard to meet high expectations, we see that in some cases causes or lacks flexibility in kids' scheduling classes of choice. Just this week, something came out from the Michigan Department of Education that is saying that at least looking at 12 classes will no longer require certification, that they are phasing out these certifications. This includes communication arts, which is an AX, computer science, dance, fine arts, journalism, marketing, recreation, Polish and Russian. You don't see a lot of that, but it's on there. Sociology and visual arts. So it is being left up to the administrator to use their discretion now, that if we're going to hold those classes, that no longer do we have to have an endorsement starting in 2017. So when we talk about a national teacher shortage, which is happening and is my passion, we're looking at 240,000 fewer teachers going into education on a regular basis right now. 35% less going in, 30% going out before their time. That's a 65% gap in people staying in and leaving education. So when people say there is not a shortage, there is. When I talk, I first and foremost talk about Novi, but I care about my profession coast to coast. And you look at states like California and Texas. California on a regular basis has to hire 65,000 teachers a year. They come here to do it. Guess what? We're no longer producing them. So there is a crisis here, and somehow we have to continue to elevate our profession, and that's what I work on daily. I don't get to say it much, but when I do, I want people to hear, because teachers matter, education matters, and if we're not producing good teachers, we're not going to be producing good administrators. So I'm going to continue to work hard at this and hire the very best and do what I can to elevate our profession.
And a segue to that, it is Teacher Appreciation Week, and last week I was fortunate to present at the Governor's Education and Talent Summit. Brian Langley and Emily Polonsky, two of our teachers at the high school, were prominently featured throughout those 2 days. I did a presentation on how can schools and communities collaborate to attract, retain, and grow with international business. On that committee was the Michigan Economic Development Corporation's Lindsay Kirchinger, Chief of Protocol, Charlie Ackerman, Head of HR from Bosch North America, Kate Simon from the Japan Center for Michigan Universities, and Alice Smith, our very own Alice Smith. Cultivating these relationships with international business really does. Social media is one of those things that I've used to cultivate many of these relationships and bring them along. Really a neat presentation, followed by the good fortune I had a one-on-one with Governor Snyder for a number of minutes. So I'd like to thank the governor for his time as I explained to him what we're doing around our B-STEAM concept. I also had a one-on-one with Roger Curtis, who's the Department of Talent and Economic Development, was able to share with him what we're doing in Novi and the vision of how we can help get our kids ready for right when they graduate out of school to go into great jobs. I'd like to also take the opportunity to thank Steve Barr. We went through the furniture piece today, but that vision to get flexible furnishing spaces to our kids and provide learning environments for our staff that they can continue to grow in their own instruction and teaching in doesn't happen easily. One of the things that Steve brought up a couple weeks ago is actually the hardest part is disposing of the furniture, and it's difficult, and you've done a great job with that, Steve, and thank you. And then thank you to Carol Diglio. My team has been hiring, and in the thick of hiring for really critical positions that help some of our kids that we're most concerned about around closing our achievement gaps. And my team is out ahead of that and really trying to get out in hiring, but I know Carol has been a huge resource for them and has built a process that's worked. So again, I'd like to thank the governor for his time. I'd like to thank Roger Curtis for his time. I'd like to thank Charlie Ackerman for his time in coming up to Lansing. And it's great on this Teacher Appreciation Week to look up on the stage and see Brian Langley getting a standing ovation from a room full of educators because he delivers an impassioned speech on what education really means. Or to see Emily Polanski interviewing Brian Whiston, as cool as the other side of a pillow in front of 500 people, and realize that those teachers are in our district, are in Novi, and it feels fantastic. So thank you.
And if I can just add, Brian Whiston did give us the flexibility to work with our curriculum and our class selection. So that was very promising as we continue to work hard to bring B-STEAM to our kids. We have to find room in their schedules to do that. He loved the idea and gave us the flexibility to work, and he wants to work with us. So that was a high note for us this week as well.
I'm glad you included that tidbit.
Yep.
That's pretty important information. All right. Next, we have committee reports. I don't know that we've had any committees that met since our last meeting, but again, May 11th.
And we do have a capital projects committee meeting coming up, I believe, the week of May 22nd. We haven't gotten to.
We need to schedule stuff with that week, right?
Still working on scheduling, but expect an update sometime after that.
All right. Next, we have board communications, any opportunity for board members to share things they've been involved with, interesting, anything. I know, Mr. O'Connor, would you like to share about the legislative conference? You probably went to the better.
I don't know, you were there longer than I was. Mrs. Murphy and I attended the MESB annual legislative day conference. I was only able to be there for half a day. But as part of the presentations, there were 4 different workshops, and the one that was of interest to me that was really very cool, and it follows with Bob Moore and what you were talking about in terms of his accolades with Oakland County business. This session talked about the fact that a separate entity, the Kellogg Foundation, which is a nonprofit, is investing $100,000 with Oakland County Schools to actually put together a separate adequacy study that will be 20,000 times better than what the state put together in terms of what the actual real costs of education are going to be. For those of you who know, the adequacy study that the state of Michigan did highlight some deficiencies in budget in terms of lack of funding for ELL students and at-risk students, and the legislatures have in their budget proposals added to that. But really, that was the end of it, and there were a lot of things in that adequacy study that were very poor. Things like, what is really the cost of education based on not only socioeconomic differences, but regional differences, the cost of up north Michigan, the west side of Michigan versus metropolitan Detroit. And this study is going to really include a lot of evidence-based data to really go in, and they're going to talk to over 200 educators over the next 9 months to really get a true adequacy study. And it should be released by the first quarter of 2018, which will be perfect because that'll be, the nuts and bolts of what we really can do to begin to lobby for, proper educational funding, with our legislators in Lansing, because there will be an election in November 2018, so the time is perfect. So Bob Moore and that whole crew through the funding of the Kellogg study is really going to make a true adequacy study, so we'll know what the cost of education is for kids in the state of Michigan.
That is good news. Other board members have additional?
Well, how were your sessions?
They were good. I will say the one was affirming. It was they talked about restorative practices a lot, which we have instituted already at our middle school, so we're kind of ahead of the curve with that. But they did share some additional resources that are available for peer mediation and some other things. I actually had a brief conversation with RJ about it, because there's a group that goes in and actually trains like high schoolers to mediate using a lot of the restorative practice techniques, which is just kind of another evolution of our Leader in Me, restorative practices, and restorative circles, and then what the intention is in high school. We've done a few things there, but I know that the NEF is chomping at the bit to do more in that area. So that was good information. And then the other was just a presentation of the budget, which was kind of similar, the three different budgets, and similar information to what Mr. Barr has been presenting to us and sharing with us. And I know one of them voted, and it came out of the House. You didn't comment at all. I don't know if you have any.
The Senate passed.
The Senate passed.
Senate and House.
Yeah. So we're waiting to see because they're not the same.
It'll be a few weeks.
Okay.
What's really eye-opening, especially about that legislative day, because there are about 200 people from all over the state of Michigan, and you confirm a lot of what we hear all the time, that you went to that session and you had already known it, because we're informed on a regular basis of what's going on. Many school districts across the state are not. It's really sad. Yeah. So there were a lot of school board members there during that legislative. That could have been the first presentation that they had on the budget, and yet, we're bored because we know it. We're always kept in touch, and we know what's going on, and we're close to it. So it's it'd be nice to get other school boards to get more involved in the process, so that they understand what's going on.
Yeah, so they can impact the legislation. I
Correct.
do want to thank my fellow board members for spending last Saturday, and I know the cabinet was there for the morning. We got some work done and had some good discussions too, and that was really helpful. And it is staff appreciation. You are staff, so thank you for being there Saturday, and thank you for being here now. And I know Mr. O'Connor's kind of said thank you for keeping us informed, because a lot of people don't do that for their boards. So we do appreciate that. I don't really have anything additionally. I know we didn't take a break tonight, so people are probably wanting to do that. So we do not have a need for an executive session, I understand, because there was a little break to negotiations. So we will get maybe an update on that the next time and have an executive session on it.
Great.
So I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Mrs. Stevenson, supported by Mrs. Hood. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned for the evening. Thank you.